Resorcio, an online bazaar where you can find, share, and create resources.
Happy to be part of this panel that endeavors to support women and to realize how truly empowered they are in the eyes of law. And on that note, here is wishing you all a very happy Women's Day. Well, as you are aware of the topic of discussion today by the panelists is basically know your rights, women's legal rights at work and at home. So I'll just take you through the rights empowered for women at workplace. As we just happen to hear ma'am's inputs, which she has just actually covered most of the area, but still, I'll just skim through the whole thing just in a very brief manner. Well, when we look back to the history, we find that initially the women were under tremendous torture. We see if there's been sati system, how dowry was prevailing. And after the divorce, they were not permitted to remarry. All these aspects were something a taboo in the society. It was all our educated leaders like Father of the Nation, Mahatma Gandhi, and Sri B.R. Ambedkar, who took up a step to see that, to bring to the notice of the women, saying that you step out of the house, come out of that framework, and try to endure in the public sphere in fight for your independence. So as the country started fighting for independence, I would say even this particular section also started to fight for their independence, for their rights. And then slowly, as the British rules, when we took over the country, or rather when we attained independence, from the beginning of the Constitution itself, most of the aspects were taken care. If you just glance through Article 14, Article 14 says the right to equality, which means, and let me just remind you, this was way back in 1940s when this was drafted, where they were conscious enough to know or say that everyone should be treated equal. So Article 14, irrespective of your sex or any other caste, creed, or anything, you ought to be considered equal and there should not be any discrimination. Similarly, Article 16 of the Constitution also guarantees equality of opportunity in public employment, irrespective of sex. So whether you are a male or a female, you apply for a job or for that matter, an educational institution for your graduation, there can't be any discrimination. So slowly these aspect, or rather the aspect of where you're not to be discriminated, everyone to be treated equally, we started gaining that right way back from the day of independence. So Articles 14 and 16 contemplates the said aspect. Similarly, the 73rd and 74th Amendment of the Constitution ensured reservation of seats for women in rural and urban local bodies to give them a greater political voice and empowerment. Now we find that 33% of the reservation ought to be given to women for election. That's why we have so many MLAs and at the same time MPs in the we do find when we watch TV, in the news, when there is a discussion happening in the assembly, state assembly, as well as in the Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha. It's so happy to see that there is a voice by the women for, or rather challenging their rights and pointing out their rights before the legislature to make sure there is equivalent protection for women in respect to law. And as we go by, we find that laws are being brought in. For example, Dowry Prohibition Act 1961 brought in to see that dowry is prohibited. Then came domestic violence, which I would say, even which, in spite of the said act, there it's prevailing. It's high time, but we find there is a large, or rather a decrease in the same. We need to appreciate or accept that fact, not just because there's a protection of right, but it's because of the education, I would say. I would rather, that would be my opinion. But still, if something such prevails in a domestic side, you have a law which takes care of your domestic violence. That is Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. Then, as you step out from your house, you are actually protected inside your house by this particular act. And when you step out from your house, if you go to a workplace, you are not, you are also protected there. You can't undergo any kind of sexual harassment. So that's why we have Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013. Then we have immoral traffic, the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act of 1956. So it is, wherever we find there has been a loop, the legislation has made sure it has been, tackled in such a way, and they've come out with the legislation. And then we've been seeing an acid attack. And once that has become prevalent in the society, the legislature took a further step to incorporate Section 326A in the IPC. That is a strict penal provision which has been incorporated against acid attack. Then we have an amendment made to the Factories Act, because Factories Act, it is especially related to women. It is made sure that they don't work at the night hours, basically protecting their rights. Then there is equal remuneration, irrespective whether you're a female or a male. Based on your work, based on your time, what you consume, you are directed to be paid. So there is an Equal Remuneration Act of 1976. Then we have the Maternity Benefit Act, 1961, which provides a security of wages and employment to women immediately before or after confinement due to pregnancy. So these are the few of the acts which takes care of the interest or purely the aspects of relating to a woman. And then if I go by one of each of the acts, I would say the protection of sexual harassment of women at the workplace, which I would be rather dealing. This all started way back in the year 1993, when a social activist, Banwari Devi, was gang raped because she stood against child marriage. She voiced her opinion in the village of Rajasthan. Couple of NGOs took over the issue. They filed a public interest, or rather a matter, before the Supreme Court. At that time, let me just point out, there was no law which took care of a women's protection at the workplace. So basically, the law which could be brought in during the argument was human protection law, human rights. So the argument was raised on that, and then the court came out with the judgment stating that the legislature, indicating or bringing to the note of the legislature, it's high time that we bring up an act, formulate an act to protect women at their workplace. And that's how it is based on the Vaishyaga versus State of Rajasthan. It's a 1997 judgment. It's a full bench judgment where the Honorable Supreme Court categorically, clearly stated what exactly the government has to do. And that is how we now have an act which takes care or protects the interest of women at workplace. Well, what are the ingredients or the sections that we have in this particular act? I'll just skim through that, in the sense, if you're working at a workplace which has a woman strength, whether it's one, you need to have a panel. If she undergoes any kind of harassment, she has a right to make a complaint. Whether it's a frivolous or not is something which the panel will take care of. They'll go through it. And once they receive such a complaint, they have to intimate the person who it is alleged against, who is given an opportunity of being heard, and then they consider the whole aspect. So the guidelines is such that the duty of the employer or other person in workplace and other institutions take care or protect the interest of a woman. And then the employer, the workplace, and other institutions are responsible to prevent or deter from such commission of acts of sexual harassment. And when a complaint is preferred, as I pointed out instead, it has to be dealt by the panel. And panel, once they find it is something is an ingredient or an aspect has happened, or such an issue had prevailed, they have to place it before the district committee. So that is how the act enumerates or states the actions to be taken by the employer when it relates to the harassment at workplace. It is, in other words, is also known as POSH Act, POSH Act. So that is Prevention, Prohibition of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace. Now, the further if I go, whether it's related to the same act, the other aspect is there are penalties. There are, the issue, the complaint committee, once they receive it, have the powers of a civil court and are required to provide for a conciliation also. It's not as if the person is not given an opportunity to conciliate and finish it off in front of the committee. The committee can also take an action as per the act and come out with a penalize the person and see that whether he is removed from that organization or punished or file an FIR. Intimate the police station that such an act has happened and file an FIR. These are the procedures which is contemplated in the act. But apart from this, what is the other law which protects the women at workplace? Another is, because everywhere when we talk about protection, we automatically think it's only the harassment. It is not so. Apart from that, there are other things, as I just pointed out, stated, maternity leave. Who takes care of that? Similarly, Minimum Wages Act, because you can't be subjected to discrimination just because you are a woman. You need to be taken care, irrespective of the fact that what sex you are, based on the work, the time which you put in, you have to be paid. And then I'll just take you through the law of maternity benefits. That is it's an act formulated in 1961. The main provision of the act is that you get 26 weeks of paid maternity leave, 1 month of paid leave for any illness due to pregnancy or miscarriage. Then we have medical bonus of rupees 2,500 to 3,500 if the employer provides prenatal or postnatal care. This is just a gist of that act, but this is the basic thing of that act. And apart from this, at the workplace, I have not been able to place any other provisions or act or law which protects the women at workplace. Summing up the whole thing, I would say at present, or rather now, with this particular century, women is protected in a large manner. Court does not keep quiet. Of course, you go before a court by filing a case. It takes time because it's a procedure, nothing else. So at present, it is women who's more protected than man, I would say, because which is required, domestic violence. But one thing is we should not misuse it. We find, being a lawyer, I do see people after being separated for 3 or 4 years, and the 5th year you go before the court, before the magistrate and prefer a complaint saying that I was subject to domestic violence. Because once you file a petition, he'll be arrested straight away by the police based on the allegations. Once that happens, automatically there's always a scope for settlement. Yes, even the lawyers also need to be means said we are also responsible for it because we encourage to do that. But again, that has been misused. So I would rather, I have been voicing my opinion, said there should be a timeline or a limitation, period of limitation in that. Court has not looked into so far. We don't have a judgment or a law which says that there's a time limit. But of course, taking into account of these facts and circumstances, court do appreciate those aspects. So there we do misuse that. Women do misuse that. I don't fear to say that. But it need not. When you are protected, when you have a law, make sure that you are within the framework, approach the court, and fight for your justice. We all believe the justice and judicial system, and it is open and is only based on the law that it happens. So we need to protect. And similarly, when it goes to your workplace, you are protected. So we have cases. We've seen cases of, there are cases which, based on when you are not considered for your promotion, suddenly they file a petition for harassment, saying I'm being harassed because I've not been promoted. Court has dealt it rightly. So please don't misuse it. That's all my humble request is. Because there are laws which protects each one of you, everyone in different circumstances, whether you are at home, whether you step out, whether you have been harassed by any man. You are not, no men are supposed to look at you. Court has gone to that extent. So you are protected well. Please make sure that you go within the framework of the law. That is all my submissions. Thank you, Maitri. Thank you for the opportunity. And I hope I made my points a bit clear. That's all.
Thank you so much.
Not at all. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. It was quite interesting how you connected this with, glimpses of history and then took us through the constitutional provisions and the pertinent legislations and case laws on this. And as we all know, even judicial activism is so brilliant in our country. And even the Supreme Court, through various landmark judgments, has always been the protector of, has been the frontline protector of these rights. And, I really believe that, it should not be misused, because it is a shield, and, like an arm and a shield, it should not be misused. It is something to protect.
Yeah. That's what I didn't want to use a word shame or anything, because we are now in a discussion. I can't, and the only man, yeah. And I'm sure Shanti will not spare me also if I use something like that.
I'm saying, so law has always been like a shield to protect, and I think we should respect that shield which has been protecting us.